Hi, my name is David Brum, the Programs and Events Manager here at the Northwest Museum of Arts and Culture. I'm here with Shaun Higgins, who is visiting with us today to briefly discuss the museum's new virtual movie club film series, which begins in March with a World War II theme in support of the museum's currently showing World War II exhibits, which he will be hosting. Welcome, Shaun.
Hi, David. Great to be with you today.
Why don't we start with you telling us how the virtual film club came about and how it will work?
Well, as you know, for a couple of 3 years now, we've been doing twice a year film series at the MAC based on various themes. And of course, we can't do that now with the COVID issues. So the idea came up that let's try to do this virtually. And so we've established the MAC Movie Club. And a good place to start seemed to be the exhibit we have going on right now elsewhere in the museum related to World War II. Now, the movie club's really easy. It works like this. It works just like any book club. You go to the MAC website, you look at the films that are going to be shown, one each, the featured films, one each for the next 4 months. And you register for those you'd like to see and then participate in a live stream discussion about those movies on set times and dates. And once you've got your registration, you figure out what movies you want to see, you obtain a copy of those just like you would at a local book club or film club. And you got to obtain a copy of the film. You can buy it, you can borrow it, you can rent it or borrow it, as I said, or stream it at your will and watch the movie at your leisure. And then if you want and are registered, you join the conversation on the prescribed time and date. And by the way, along the way, you can watch the movie alone or you can watch it with a bunch of friends. And the only thing you have to do is bring your own Chardonnay or beverage of your choice while you watch it. And then you can all come and join the conversation about the movie afterwards.
Great. Well, it's been estimated that there have been made well over 1,000 films made about World War II and from so many countries and made over so many years. How did you select the films we will be discussing, and how can you possibly cover the topic adequately through just 4 films?
Well, it's almost impossible to do. As you noted, you mentioned more than 1,000. They come from like 30 different countries, have made movies one way or another related to World War II. And they've made them in a whole number of genres. You have the strategic and the historic films. You have the propaganda films from the period that were designed to shore up morale at home and promote heroism of the people fighting at the front. You had lots of war romance movies, and the balance between war and romance in those is all over the board. You have some very straight comedy films. You have the anti-war, satirical, ironic films. Films like Catch-22 come to mind. And then in addition to the feature films, you have dozens of documentaries, a couple of which we want to show. But what I wanted to do here was to make sure we had covered the combat strategy and history relating to 2 major fronts, the Pacific and the Asian front in World War II. And also to make sure that we had dealt with the home front, what was going on, how people were surviving hardships, shortages, conflicts on their homeland, and also to take a look at people who were working not at the front lines in combat, but were supplying needed information and skills, code breaking, for example, that helped the war be carried forward successfully. So the place to start, it seemed to me, was a movie that would help us frame World War II historically and strategically in Europe. And so we're starting with The Longest Day. Now, a lot of people saw this film when it came out in 1962 and haven't seen it since, or have seen it once or twice since. It's a movie that has grown in critical appreciation over the years. It's beautifully filmed, historically accurate, pretty much, depiction of the D-Day invasion in Europe. And it's marked by seeing that combat and the strategies evolve from both sides of the war. A lot of German actors, German advisors, including people who fought on both sides in the actual invasion. Actors like Richard Todd, who participated in the invasion with the British forces. And you have advice from advisors to the film, included several German generals and ranking officers, as well as the American combatants and advisors. So it's a long film, but it's a wonderful film and a great way to start a discussion of the strategies that led to the Nazi defeat in World War II in Europe. Now we're following that up with the equivalent of a film that tells the story in a similar way about the Pacific Front. And this one starts right at the beginning of the Pacific War, Tora, 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 which depicts the attack on Pearl Harbor. And again, this film was done using Japanese actors portraying the Japanese forces and leaders, and American actors portraying the American strategists. It's a remarkable film. It was not given, I think, the credit it deserved at the time it was released in 1970, but has since grown in critical praise and is seen as a very accurate depiction of the views of the Pearl Harbor attack as seen both from the Japanese side and the American side. It's the action that started it all and serves as a great launch point for discussion of the war in the Pacific. The third film in the series is called The Ghost Army, and it's a very short documentary. It runs just a little over an hour, relatively recent. It's been produced about 3 years ago. And The Ghost Army tells the story of, this is one of the things about the other talents other than combat, the strategies. Toward the end of the war in Germany, a special army unit was put together that was comprised primarily of artists, technicians, designers, sound engineers, and they were put in a group to be creative and come up with ways to deceive the defending German army into thinking American forces were someplace other than where they actually were. That there were more of them than there actually were, and that they were winning in combats and taking over villages, all kinds of things. They made tanks out of balloons. They ran sound trucks blaring out combat sounds, all kinds of deceptions. And they included some of the most famous artists that would emerge after the war in post-war America. One that comes to mind is Ellsworth Kelly, the great abstract expressionist. So it fits in with the museum's art mission as well as with the war mission, and it's a darn good documentary. And we're bringing up the rear with a series on the home front. And I've chosen for this a British movie that's seldom seen in the United States. It was made in 1958. It's called Carve Her Name with Pride. And it tells the story of Violette Szabo, a woman who, she was the daughter of an English father and a French mother who had met during World War I. She marries a Frenchman, soldier, in around 1940, after they meet in London. And then she's recruited by British intelligence, the special operations executive, to fight behind lines because of her fluent French, and to aid the French resistance and other resistance movements throughout Europe. And she's quite the hero in British lore, but we know not too much about her. There have been books written about her, but in America, she's not hardly a household word. Anyway, this film stars BAFTA award winner Virginia McKenna, and in a relatively rare screen role, Paul Scofield, among others. And it's really a remarkable, nice black and white show. One of the things I like about this movie is the first part of it does some wonderful provides wonderful example and feel of what it was like to be in London in 1940. Of course, the British were already at war with Germany at that point. Anyway, it's a remarkable film, and it also shows a woman in historic combat.
Thanks, Shaun. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about the films or this program series?
Well, just one thing. When you go to the website, you'll find a list of other suggested films that deal with the topics. The 4 topics being the war in Europe, the war in Asia, the cyber films, the coding and so forth, and the home front films. And that list is will be modified as we go along. I've already found a couple of films that I want to add to it. But these are, they will show up in my discussion and presentations about the movies and about the topic. And people can watch them or not watch them. They won't be the focal point of the discussions, but they do make for some really good viewing on the various subject matters that I picked them for. And altogether, there are about 20 films. So I hope people will watch not just the featured films, but will be prompted to take a view of some of these others.
Thanks so much, Shaun. The museum is really excited to launch this series, and we're really appreciative to you for taking the time to organize and host them for us. So thank you.
Well, thank you, and I'm delighted to do it, and I hope we get some good participation.